What do I think about Candace Owens? And I'm speaking about that in the context of she's a public servant, or she's decided to go public and to help our country, help the world. And I'm not saying it's good to just talk about people and what do you think about this person? What do you think about that person? Not as gossip here. But overall, she's helped, um, definitely helped America for the better, helped us to be a safer nation in the past. When it comes to Israel, it's a complicated issue because I feel like, what we call rhinos in America, you have all these, sometimes you get fake, we root them out, we try to get rid of them, but you get fake Republicans. They're really Democrats, because Democrats lie all the time, right? They're hypocrites. And so that's part of, some people would say that's partisan, but that's what it is. I mean, they don't support God. They want God out of politics, which means you're allowed to lie. So the Republicans don't, they'll say all politicians lie. No, they don't. Politicians are human beings just like everybody else. And they're supposed to try not to lie if they believe in God. And if they don't, why does it matter? All right. And so if you want God out of politics, then it's okay for you to lie. The Republicans don't believe that. And so anybody, you can say it, they can lie and act like Republicans lie, but anybody can be tempted to lie, or you can lie about them lying. Like they've done with, I think I've heard Donald Trump before do some statistics that change every day. And he was right about the day they were. And then the Democrats were lying because the next day the statistics changed and they were saying he lied about the statistics. And they were lying. They knew the statistics changes every day. I forget which subject that was on, but that happens. And so, anyhow, but there's a lot going on. But in Israel, you have rhinos. You have a lot of Democrats who pretend to be the conservative. I mean, it's like in America, it's not the same as there. So you got a lot of liberals pretending to be conservatives. In my view, that's not a well studied thing, but this is what I gather. So they're hating on people from the United States who are conservatives, just like the liberals here do. And so that's part of what's going on. And so understand some of her views. Maybe they're tired of the war, and maybe they think they've won by now and should stop. That's part of it. But the fact that Epstein's connected to Israel, I don't blame Israel for that. I think our own Democrats have probably affected that through drug cartels and different things, the power they have with drug cartels everywhere, promoting illegal immigration. So it seems that she's bothered because you got the same people who and Democrat media in America promote killing everybody, murder. They promote murder, right? And then they spit on the graves of the people they murder for the sake of promoting more murder. That's conspiracy to murder. If you're an intellectual and you're into ethics and you're evaluating it, that's what it is. They're conspiring to make more murderers feel free to murder. And then they don't want them to get the death penalty because they want to be able to release them from jail. Say if we ever had a civil war, I think part of their plan is, all right, we never gave the death penalty to any of these people. We can get one Democrat police officer to open the gate of all the killers. And so they want to create mayhem. That's what they're preparing for, it seems. That's how adamant they are about keeping murderers alive, right? And murderers, I believe in mercy for repentant murderers. But if they're not showing repentance and they're still trying to kill people in jail, I say go through with the death penalty and teach them the Bible, hope they go to heaven, forgive them, hope they repent. But we got to keep society safe from people who are repeat murderers, right? Repeat assaulters. That if you're assaulting somebody and they don't die, but you were trying to kill them and they didn't die, and you do that a lot, hoping they'll die, it's the same thing as a killer, right? Just because they didn't die doesn't mean you didn't mean to kill, not to kill them. Anyway, so I'm not quick to judge Candace. She's a genius. I'm not quick. I don't know if they're making all the right decisions on this, but in a sense, it could be. It's a subject they don't want to die right now. They want their strategy of how can we communicate and get information to more people and be effective and fix this problem. I think, and so she has. She's super smart, and a lot of people on TV are, but So I'd say a lot of people in TV and stuff are a lot smarter than me with memory wise, because you have to qualify memory wise. Ethical wise, frankly, I think I have a gift ethical wise, but then I have a bad memory for teaching it or for speaking. I have to, so I'm good with words in a way. But Candace is amongst all the people in television and stuff. She's there's something about her. She's smarter than the rest, right? She's even on that level. She's smarter. So I think they're doing a good job in exposing things. But I wouldn't want to oppose uh, the good side of Israel. I want to make sure you still support. You want to make sure the good side of Israel doesn't get bullied by all these nations that you're, uh, you know, uh, addressing. And so, on the other hand, we're getting to see that we put Israel on trial for once, because we always look, you have the victim. Don't play a victim. She may view them as playing the victim now. Maybe they have become that, but I think that would be because of the liberal influence in America and in England and Europe, basically, too. So the liberal side there is just similar to the one here in America. And I'm going to say even maybe worse than Europe, but actually they've brought that here now. Biden and Obama brought all the worst facets of liberalism to America from overseas. And so they've done that. They've affected that in Israel too, in my view. I think honestly, I think the worst country in the world, if the Republicans did not exist in America, and it was just the Democrats, I think we'd be the worst country in the world. And evidence and statistics show we are the worst country in the world as far as having the most dangerous cities in the world for murderings, killings from our gangs and everything. But who designed that? Democrats. So Charlie Kirk died partly because he was teaching. The Democrats didn't want to hear his message anymore of him exposing that they oppose fatherhood in black communities. So the real racists are the Democrats. They're calling him racist because he's helping teach the youth in black and white neighborhoods that fatherhood matters. And the Democrats have purposely picked on all the youth on that, but purposely targeted black communities on purpose, their youth, to tell them that act like fatherhood is irrelevant and trying to teach people not to be fathers. They've purposely targeted the black community and created more drag queens and stuff like that were not born with those kind of chemistry inclinations when they were younger. They weren't born that way. They were bullied into being that way. So Democrats have used some gangs to do that kind of stuff, whether it was in jail or not. Democrats are the ones that did prohibition, and linked to the evolutionists and KKK. All right. And I got off on this subject because it needs to be heard, and it ties in though to this is how I view people like. When I assess Candace, I'm viewing all these subjects and how the domino effect goes. And I don't think she necessarily agrees with me on victimhood and stuff. But I do know that she contested victimhood and when she did that, and there's some, not her, but just a lot of people in the media will do it similar to the way she did and claim there's no such thing as a victim almost, right? So I think she realizes there are some victims, and I'll give you an example of a real victim. Charlie Kirk is a victim of a murderer. He's a victim of the Democrat Party's lying about him and calling him racist. And so there are victims the same way, and had drugs thrown on them their whole life, and they're lied about, and they're dehumanized the same way by calling them names, drug addict or this or that, loser, whatever. And so people have qualified being able to steal from them all the time. And so I don't know if she's been able to study this, but there are people who are in the poorer side of the community who are allowed to be robbed all the time, and that's what's hard to recover from. And so they're victims to that, but they're not a victim to where they shouldn't keep trying and repenting. And so Charlie, in one sense, is not a victim because he stood up for black children being taught that fatherhood matters, and wants more he's trying to help there be more fathers in the black cultures. So he addressed that directly, and so he did specifically address black cultures, but he does it to all the youth. But he said he knows that black cultures have been taught by Democrats, and not to have that. And for some reason, he thinks that's the biggest issue. I think and she probably does too. I think that it's the biggest issue is that drug laws are racist. I do, and there's psychological warfare behind that, and there could be. Uh, it's kind of like making coffee illegal and then taking people's houses away if they drink it. And so we pick on addicts too much because I could tell you to quit drinking coffee. It's not that easy to stay off coffee. You're going to keep, at some point, you might quit it, but you're going to think it's not a big deal. I'll go back to it. And that's the same way it is with drugs. So it's not a fair to pick on the drug addicts and stuff. So they are a victim of a sabotage law. So, but so they should be picking on dealers, not addicts, right? Not picking on, but they should have make you have a license. They should make sure they have safe products and the natural products and stuff like that. And it should be highly regulated on the dealing side. On the consumer side, frankly, it's not much of it's nobody's business until you misbehave. If you get drunk and you do something wrong to somebody or whatever, or drink and drive, then you should be in trouble. But otherwise, it's your choice. It should be your choice, but with limits though, age limits and all that kind of stuff. So anyhow, but they should offer 2% instead of 12%. Okay, so I don't think Candace and I don't think anybody knows that subject like I do, because they don't care. We've been so convinced that drugs are of the devil, medicine is of the devil. Bottom line, that's what they. But then we are a hypocrite and we still use coffee as a medicine and tea as a medicine, and so that's equatable to some of the same stuff that's in the street. That's safer in the tea form, much safer in the tea form than it is in the smoking forms and snorting forms, which do go directly into your bloodstream. So, but some of that stuff's not so bad, probably. I mean, it's still, there's differences, but I think they're natural. Some of them are natural medicines, that the KKK and the evolutionists, which KKK is connected to evolution. All right. So, I mean, that's a talk I'd like to have to Candace Owens, and it's just explain some of that stuff. And so there are real victims, and but there's a huge portion of society that plays the victim on purpose, and they're the ones making victims. They trick people into being compassionate towards them, and then they kill the person that's helped steal from the person who's being compassionate. And that's happened in my life to where they've robbed me. And I don't call myself a victim totally in some ways, but because I chose to try to get to know that culture anyway and show love to them, right? So and understand the situation, and it became very complicated. So wasn't that easy to learn, and I'm still learning it. So what do I think about Candace? They aren't on the same concentration as me. I think I have a right to be on my concentration, and I think that I'll give it time. I hope she hasn't turned on Christianity or something, but because there's a few things I've heard her say that I'm like, oh no, I hope she hasn't gone that way. And I don't know. I thought she was a pretty strong Christian, but I've disagreed with her on stuff like how she would talk about an addict or a loser. I disagree with Trump on that, calling people losers sometimes. But I do think when he calls Jimmy Kimmel a loser, that's a halfway fitting, because Jimmy Kimmel is not here's the difference between a winner and a loser to me. It's one way of looking at it, is if you fail, if you mess up, but you're trying, you keep trying to overcome, no matter how long you've been addicted to coffee or something else, and you keep on trying, then you're not a loser. But if you're going to sit there and say coffee is good for you, I don't want to hear that crap, and you just promote it all the time, and if you do that, that's a loser to me. So you've never repented, you've never try to be careful, you've never told the truth about it, you don't care about the truth, that's a loser. And so Jimmy Kimmel is promoting murder. That's what he does, basically. He's condoning murder. He's refusing to give condolences for Charlie Kirk and stuff like that. And he may have done it real briefly at one point, I don't know, but he continues to disrespect the life of Charlie Kirk, the fact that he had a right to life. And so he's condoning the murder of it, which is a promotion of more murder. And then he's lying and acting like that the government's fascist and trying to kick him out of out of there for the freedom of speech, but that's the conspiracy to murder is not the freedom of speech. So I'm good at coming up with pointing stuff like that out, and I may be the first that I've heard do it, and I put it out there now, and hopefully it catches on. I think I've already seen it catch on somewhere. But that's what's wrong with what they're doing. The Democrats promote murder, not talking. They don't, and so that's not freedom of speech. Conspiracy to murder is not freedom of speech. And so they're brainwashing people into killing folks. And part of, disrespecting Charlie Kirk's life and lying, by the way, they promoted it by lying and calling him racist. And they're the real racists because they're mad at possibly definitely some of them. A lot of the Democrats are mad because he wanted to help black families. And so Kirk wanted to help black families, help more black people have families and succeed in that way, and have somebody to call mom, dad, brother, and sister instead of just through adoption and gangs and stuff like that. Adopting, I've been in the streets. I've been told to adopt family out there and stuff, but it's not the same as having real family. Now, sometimes families break up and they don't get along. That's fine too, but it's still something about having real family. So the Democrats don't want black folks to have real family. That's racist. That's racist. So they're calling the people that try to help teach family values that came from God and the black community, they're calling them racist. So think about it. I mean, so Kirk, in a sense, died. He took a risk and taught black cultures in America family values because the Democrats are trying to stop that from happening. And they've been doing that. And so they do it not just to black folks. They do it to everybody, but they definitely did it mostly to black folks on purpose. And then if you try to teach black folks good things, they call you racist. I think they've called Candace racist, right? Because she's tried to do that. So, and then when they call somebody racist, they've trained the black community to qualify it. So the black folks aren't the ones killing. Well, they do, but they're not the ones going after the high public leaders. I've seen it out in public. They threaten to kill me all the time if I talk politics. The ones in some of the gangs coming out of jail, or I won't say gangs, but guys that appear to be gangsters to me because they want to teach you to steal or threaten to harm you. And so there's a lot of, the funny thing is about those cultures is some of them are friendlier. Once they see your humanity, see you eating and struggling the same way they do, that's the same way I do, then they're more reasonable, some of them. But some of them, if you speak politics, or speak on any of this stuff, there's certain ones they want to kill you. They're going to threaten to kill you if you don't stop. And so, but there's a lot of those too, still. And then I've approached those and talked anyway sometimes. And I do it, pick my time and be careful. I avoid it mostly, to be honest. So I'm able to have a talk with somebody else and share stuff I've studied and observed mostly, but studied by observation and studied through biblical stuff, I've been through school too, but I'm just saying I've studied with my mind and what I see. But then I've also studied ethics. So, but what they've done, the Democrats, their trick here, and they know what they're doing. They've trained black folks from the racist side of black society, which they will never address. There's probably way more racist black folks than white folks, right? So in America, until Obama and Biden let all the racist Europeans come here, the ones that are, and specifically the racist ones. So I'm not saying all of them. The ones that came legal aren't probably racist, some not as many, but the ones that came illegal are probably racist, right? They expect you to be a drug dealer, one of their slave drug dealers, right? So, and on the other hand, the black community that does the dealing of drugs, the side of it that does the drug dealing, they have slaves. Most of them are slave masters. And that's why they won't let somebody like me talk, and they want to kill me if I talk, because they're used to doing that. They're a slave master. I have to obey, right? And I have obeyed and just quit and walked off. And they let me live because I respect them. I obey them and respect them. I respect that they're willing to assert their authority and kill me or whatever. I don't respect it, but I respect that I don't have an option. And that I can go back and talk later when they're not there or somebody else is there. or I can, maybe they'll calm down at some time and see the light and see that there is purpose in me talking and trying to uh, find some common understanding, right? And that's worked sometimes, to be patient with that and walk away. And so, but here's the point I forgot again to finish, is that a lot of those groups have qualified killing anybody who says the N word. They'll say it all the time, but if they catch somebody and they can call them racist for using that word, or if it's not the N word, I'm sorry, it's the R word, racist. But if they claim somebody's racist, then to the black community, it's okay to jump them and kill them. If somebody gets drunk, that's what happens a lot of times. These old fellas that are drinking, they'll say the N word or something while they're drunk, and that's when they get beat up by black folks. So I've never been jumped for that because I don't use the N word, and I show respect to people. But I've been jumped for money before. I've been jumped just because I was white before, but not because of somebody getting drunk and saying stupid stuff, right? So when the white Democrats called Trump racist or Charlie racist, what they're saying is, because the black community's so big, communist, there's a lot of communist black people in the Democrat Party who are slave masters and stuff. And slave masters in the cartels, so, and they make slaves of white or black, but mostly they're making slaves of black people. That's the ones that they're trying to teach. The white and black Democrats are trying to teach that fatherhood doesn't matter. They become their fathers. In a sense, they let government be their father, and they have them dealing drugs and going in and out of jail and they win stripes if they steal from a store and end up going to jail. If they don't, they end up getting $1,000, $10,000 worth of products from a store. If they don't, they go in jail. They got rank for doing it. So they've qualified killing people who they deem racist, but they don't do it on the big scale in front of cameras usually. But the white guys that killed these guys, they're getting applauded by them, right? They know they had a green light to do it. So these white dudes that killed Charlie Kirk had a green light to do it by the communist sector of black Democrats, and white Democrats. And they're the ones. So the white Democrats, though, are the ones conspiring it the most, and then some of the ones in media are doing that too. Some of the black Democrats in media. So it's, anyhow. What do I think about Candace Owens? Hope she does well. I hope she is able to make her point and succeed. Hope it helps Israel, what she's doing. If I see something that some people think what she's doing is off the wall, but I don't know the whole story, and I know she knows stuff I don't know, and I don't know what her views are or how they've changed. I have heard her say that Catholicism, or it seemed like she said something against Protestantism. I'm having trouble. I gained weight too fast, and it's slurring my speech. It's too much fat in my mouth for my tongue to move proper. That's part of it. Plus, I had a tooth pulled a while back, and I think that affects me. But I think that I'm going to take one break and pause it. I'll be right back. So Candace, I've heard her say one statement, and I have to wonder if that's AI talking too. If I look back, I didn't test that one to see if it was AI. But she had spoken against Protestants and for Catholicism. So I found out she is Catholic, if I'm correct on that. And so if it's normal if somebody wants to promote Catholicism over Protestants or evangelicals. I assume the Protestant, she means evangelical, but is Catholic Protestant? She wouldn't speak against it if otherwise. Anyway, I don't know what her views are on all that, and I don't think Catholicism is as theologically sound as a lot of the evangelicals. But the weird part is Catholicism, Protestants are doing what Catholics did back in England when everybody ran from them and came to America. Originally, the settlers back in the 1500s, they ran to America to escape Catholicism because they were being hung for reading the Bible in England and Europe, parts of Europe, especially England that I know of. But they were being hung for reading the Bible because only the Pope was allowed to read the Bible. Okay, so I have my views on Catholicism. I don't know her views, but I know that my view is this, and it's not completely well studied, but I'm looking at the basic the main churches they used to have before Jesus, right? In Rome. And so Catholicism, Roman Catholicism comes from Rome, as far as I can tell, right? And so they crucified Jesus. Before Jesus came, though, they had an Orthodox kind of church that Paul came from, I think. Or Paul was maybe related to that before he was Christian. And that was the church that's kind of a Pharisee church, just believed in keeping laws and stuff. And so they were very theological, but weren't like a real believing church. They didn't accept that Jesus was Messiah and stuff. So at the time, but they guarded the grave. The best, strongest soldier in the world guarded the grave of Jesus, Roman soldiers. And I think Catholicism came in part because they respected the fact that Jesus got out of the grave with the best army in the world guarding him. So Catholicism adopted, or the Orthodox Church, I think, and this is not a study, but this is just watching the main themes of things, how things happen, and observing that. And usually, that's how I came up with, we all came from Noah's family after the flood, looking at stuff like that, and then noticing that ethnicity came from God changing language at the Tower of Babel and all that. I'm correct about it, but the Bible shows that specifically. This I have not studied directly, but it's just pretty obvious, I think. And if somebody can really do other studies that are good at that and dispute it, fine. But I would still say, in general, the themes of what happened, that's how some of the churches that were Orthodox became supporters of Christ, right? And so I think the Orthodox Church back then wasn't a supporter of Christ, but after he rose from the grave, they respected it. And then people say that the Catholics are the ones that put the Bible together and chose which books go in and out. I think the Catholics did have a lot to do with that after Christ rose from the dead, and they respected it. They respected the true writings of the Bible, and I think they protected it. It's because they had the power to do that stuff. And I think they did because they became the Catholic Church later on. And they do respect Christ. So, I mean, the Bible, they didn't, and here's my other evidence of that. This is evidence, it's not history that I've studied. But they didn't put the Pope in the Bible. They didn't change that. They didn't put in the Bible that Mary is a supreme, has, what do you call it, is angelic or anything like that. I don't know if they worship her as a god almost, or supernatural. They didn't put that Mary's supernatural, and some of them may think that. I'm not sure how they view that exactly, but they elevate Mary. Not all of them do, right? But she should be elevated to a degree because she's the mother, the earthly mother of God, who Jesus was both God and man, fully God and fully man, fully God by God the Father, fully man by Mary. So, but they respect Jesus. Most Catholic churches I've been to, I enjoyed the service, and they worship Jesus. So do I. So, but I don't agree with the Pope and having to confess you can go straight to God in prayer. I do believe that we should share our burdens with one another, but it's dangerous today. But and so we should be helping each other along, encouraging each other along, and not just call somebody a complainer. And then if they share their struggles with you, you shouldn't be kicking them down. You should encourage them and say, "You'll overcome it. You can do it. You can just keep trying it." I believe in that. I do that, but I haven't seen too many people do that for me, or even if they do, I just think, what are they really thinking? So you go straight to God. Well, you go straight to God. They said that, but then they snobbed me after that. All right, so they say they're encouraging me, but they snobbed me. And sometimes that hurts worse than somebody who will tell straight up that they can't stand me. So that's, or it's more baffling. Anyway, so what is her view on Protestants? The thing that Protestants do now, a lot of the evangelical churches, it seems that they don't want you talking religion, just like they don't want you talking the Bible unless you're perfect, like the Pope, unless you're the pastor. You can't talk Bible to me if you're not the pastor. If you don't have a college degree, that's kind of how the Catholic Church was, that we escaped England to come to America. We have freedom to talk religion, the freedom of speech, the freedom to learn, the freedom to learn what's true and false religion. So Catholicism is not a false religion, but Mormonism does deny that Christ is God in the Trinity. The Catholics don't deny that. So I support a lot of Catholicism, but there's some hypocrite Catholic churches, and there's hypocrite evangelical churches. The ones that are talking bad about Charlie Kirk are hypocrites. All right, but and I've seen some black churches doing that. I forget, they're acting like he was a racist. They're the racists. And they're probably Muslims running a Baptist church. All right, I got to go. I like Candace.